Hello, it's me, I'm back again. So, I am here on January 1st, and my intended content creation of the day was a usual monthly wrap-up video. But not a usual per se, because what I've been doing the last few months, and really liking, is filming bits and clips throughout the month and then combining them all together for one big look at the month, which I've really been enjoying. But I just didn't do it the month of December. So my plan originally was to just show my favorites for the month, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to. And the subject of today's video is a reflection on just what I think has kind of been going on in my brain this month, and also just today too, like why am I feeling this resistance to something that I usually do enjoy doing. But today it didn't feel like I'd enjoyed doing it, so I'm not. So I want to talk about this topic instead because it's interesting to me and is making a lot of things make a lot of sense. So, as you can tell by the title, well, first of all, I will be sitting here edging my fairy tarot. I saw the idea, oh my gosh, excuse the lighting. I saw this idea on, darn it, Sylvie's channel. What is her channel name though? I did this in my last video too. I swear, I either remember the people's usernames or their first names that they share. Both is just a challenge, apparently. Sylvie. Tarot Magpie? Yes. Sylvie from Tarot Magpie. In their end of year tarot tag showed the Fairies Tarot and how they edged each of the cards to match the front colors. So that's what I'm sitting here doing at the same time. Well, we'll see if that happens. Multitasking is hard. Anyway, demand avoidance is what we're talking about today. And I've realized over the past few months that this is something that I experience more heavily than I thought. Because demand avoidance is something that every living person can and probably does experience to some level, but for neurodivergent people, it can be, not always, just like everything else I talk about, can be a little bit more extreme, and there is actually a profile of autism that centers around this experience of kind of an extremity of demand avoidance, called the PDA profile, named in two different ways. I've heard both sides for preference. I know the original label is pathological demand avoidance, so sort of this idea of, well, the demand avoidance being kind of pathological in a way. That word is weird. I see why people choose a different one. Pathological sounds like a weird word. But it's sort of this like instantaneous avoidance reaction to demands, but a different, what's the word I'm looking for? Set of words I've heard also used for PDA is persistent drive for autonomy, which I think is so cool that people can kind of like shift the wording around to fit better, but we're getting to the same thing. So we're going to start with a broad definition of demand avoidance I found, which is demand avoidance is the characteristic of a persistent and marked resistance to the demands of everyday life. Examples of demands of everyday life can be a direct demand, such as an instruction, like brush your teeth, put your coat on, complete your tax return. An internal demand, which is, or an example would be willing yourself to do something or bodily needs such as hunger or using the bathroom. And then there is indirect or implied demand, which includes any expectation, such as a question that requires an answer, food in front of you that you're expected to eat, or a bill arriving that needs to be paid. So, it's not a very studied topic as of yet, but it is mostly studied under the umbrella of autism. But I mean, just for context, can be experienced again by anyone, but like in this kind of way by any neurodivergent person. I think I like using the umbrella term neurodivergent for myself and to describe these things personally, just because I think there can be so much crossover. And so anyway, demand avoidance is what we're talking about today. I have my big pack of markers out. I got this on Amazon. I love it. I use this to edge my decks. They're like Tombow marker dupes, so I'm just taking the cards and like matching them to the markers. So fun. I'm having a blasty blast. I'm losing my train of thought. See, this is why I can't multitask like this. Anywho's, who's its, what's its, etc. Oh, this one doesn't have an exact match. That's hello? Hi. Hi, Stevie. Maybe I'll get my train of thought back someday. Demand avoidance. So, during the month of December, I really did not push myself to film those bits and clips like I usually do for the look at my month I post at the end of the month or beginning of the next month, because I'm sure, as many of you experienced, December can be so busy and really, really full of demands and expectations, and I felt that really, really heavily this year. And while so much of it is so good and joyful, I found myself having to make a lot of space for just some grace for myself, to acknowledge that these two things could exist at the same time, where I was recognizing that I feel so lucky to have these holiday celebrations I'm included in and invited to and be a part of, but that also when there's so many that build up at one time, that it really does affect my everyday life in an extreme... Stevie, oh my gosh. She just tried to climb up my back. I'll be back. Okay, oh my goodness. She has been kooky the last few weeks, where she'll nap for like an hour and then she's off the walls for like 3 hours. Anyways, what was I saying? When a bunch of social gatherings is usually what it is for me, kind of build up all at once, I find that it almost like takes up my storage of demand tolerance, if that makes sense. So other areas of my life where usually I can handle the demand, or want to handle the demand, something I enjoy doing, it just becomes harder. And this realization got me thinking about kind of just the ways that I go about doing a lot of things that I do, especially going into this new year, I'm entering a devil year, so I'm looking at all of these patterns I get stuck in and the ways perhaps I succumb to negative behaviors or societal expectation in a way. And so something that I kind of got thinking about is demand avoidance when it comes to, like I said, the things I enjoy, my tarot practice, making videos, and sort of things for me to consider in how I approach these things. If you couldn't tell, I kind of just turned on the camera and started talking because I didn't really have a plan for what I was going to talk about here. But I think that's usually how I do these, and I don't know. I think that's probably the best way to do it, so it's not too, I don't know, formulated. But something that really got me thinking about this was, as we approach a new year, I think a lot of us experience the thing of we want to do it all. And so there was all these things I wanted to study, ways of doing things. I want to do the year ahead spread, even though it's never worked for me in the past. Just all these things that I want to take part in. And what really kind of got me feeling down this month was just the fact that I was like, well, I can't even really right now keep up with the ways I usually do things and like to do things. And coming to terms with that, like I need to be flexible with myself in that way. And so when I was thinking about how I was going to approach this new year, even though I'm not really someone to subscribe to, I don't do resolutions, I don't do things of that sort, but there's an undeniable refresh energy in the air when it comes to the start of a new calendar year. And so thinking about these things, I really wanted to add in this lens of demand avoidance. And when it came down to it, because I had all of these demands in my day-to-day life this month that really built up, things that don't usually feel like a demand really did. So when I was thinking about filming my usual monthly video, it felt like a have to do rather than a want to do. Which is then it shifting into that space of demand. And when I'm too bogged down with those things, it becomes this, what's the word? Nervous system reaction almost, of like this fight or flight where it's an instant like, I can't do it, like nope, not even gonna touch my camera, not even gonna talk, can't do it. And that's something that I really do want to actively avoid. And what it comes down to is, I think, and how, or what I'm gonna try is approaching everything I usually do with the question of, how is the idea of this making me feel right now? Would it be good for me to do? And I heard this, I can't lay claim to this idea, I heard it, I think on TikTok, probably, this idea of, instead of asking yourself, or saying to yourself, I really should do this, shifting it to, would this be good for me? And I think that lens works so well for anyone who experiences demand avoidance in this way. And looking at my tarot practices for the next year, I've decided that I want to kind of remain open to all of them and not lay some big stake or claim in any of them, and just let them be what they are. And if I pick it up, I pick it up, and if I don't, I don't. It's sort of gonna be and in the moment of, okay, I know I want to engage in this, but how is that making me feel right now? Is it causing this even little ounce of dread in a way? Because when that happens, I know that's the demand avoidance activating, which means my nervous system is, what's the word? Overactive in some way. Overstimulated. That was the word. Overstimulated. Gosh, it's, these videos, I always have like thoughts in my head before I start talking, and then I just feel like I go all over the place. But I think that's what seems really doable to me right now, and it's shifting my perspective, which is something I've been getting in readings a lot lately, of needing to shift perspective of not laying on any sort of self-blame, which is coming from the should attitude, because I can't really do that to myself, especially with the things I enjoy, because that's where it starts to become something you don't enjoy anymore, and that would be sad, So a good example, in a way, of this was I took the idea that Lisa Papez posted for her year ahead reading, where she pulled all her cards and put them each month into their own envelope, and she is opening them up one by one as the months come, so it's like a surprise. So I did that for my year ahead spread too, because I do a year ahead spread every single year, and I've realized that I do not keep up with it because of a mixture of lack of object permanence. I don't remember it, and then when I do, it feels like this assignment, it feels like homework, and that's a problem I have with a lot of practices. I kind of thought it was purely, oh my gosh, here's my point in the video, came around to it, we do every time, don't we? It was a realization, or I thought it was purely an ADHD thing of attention span, getting bored of doing the same thing, and I do think that's part of it. But I think there really is this other big aspect of that demand avoidance where sometimes scheduled out tarot practices, if I'm doing too many of them or ones that really require a lot, it becomes, it brings up the tendency of demand avoidance. And because it's starting to feel like, instead of something that I have agency in, it's something that is like almost like homework. Because that's a big aspect I've learned of demand avoidance too. And in that wording of persistent drive for autonomy is the reason this demand avoidance occurs, it is thought, is because there is this, a common kind of panic neurodivergent people can feel is when there is a lack, particularly autistic people, is when there's a lack of autonomy, when you do not feel in control of the situation. Like, I know for me, it's important for me to know, like, if there's plans, I want to know when we have to get there, when I can leave, who's gonna be there, because it gives me a feeling of control over something that usually makes me feel a very big lack of control. And so when, for example, like a really, really cool practice out on the internet is the Lion's Heart tarot challenges, where there's a prompt for every single day. And I've tried doing them, and again, I thought it was that pure ADHD thing of just getting bored, but I realize now it causes this feeling in me of when there is something that there's prompts to complete every day, that it feels like the challenge is demanding something of me, and I don't have, it's almost like feeling like I don't have control over it. And like even saying these thoughts out loud, it's giving me these realizations of if I know that's what the feeling is, and that demand avoidance, it's thought to kind of boil down to autonomy, feelings around autonomy. It's kind of about giving yourself agency in something that you do. And I realize this might sound a little bit odd, and I've done a lot of reading into it and watching videos on this myself, so perhaps this might all sound crazy because it doesn't seem like all of these things are actually demanding anything of me. Like, my own videos I make, no one is demanding that they have to see something from me. You know what I mean? Like, that's not happening. The Lion's Heart Tarot Challenge, you know, the creator behind that doesn't really, I shouldn't say doesn't care if I do it or not, but like, there's so many people who follow that account, so many people who do those readings, that me, the individual, like, it doesn't matter if I do it or not. It's okay to them if I don't do it, you know? Like, so it seems like this wild thing, but it's sort of like when my nervous system is already activated in that way, these things that really are not demands per se, they become internal ones and perceived ones. It's the perception around it. And so I just wanted to talk about this because, I guess because, not as a reasoning behind not posting that wrap-up video, because it's okay if I miss one, you know, like, it's fine. But also, in case anyone else is experiencing this, especially this time of year where it's like there's so many demands going on, that it really ramps up that feeling around other things. And this is just, I'm realizing that perhaps why a lot of scheduled tarot practices don't work for me is because of this. And perhaps a solution to it is just finding a way to make myself feel like I have control over it. So for example, like something like the Lion's Heart Challenge, I've seen people where they say, okay, here's the daily prompts, I'm gonna make it a spread for the week and just do it once a week. That's providing themselves with autonomy. Or for me, what my plan is like, one, I've made this a fun game for myself. Or Lisa Pepez, really, and then I copied her idea. She took that year ahead reading that can sometimes just be a little bit boring. I'm gonna say it. It just can be a little bit boring, and made it almost like this fun game, providing a surprise, providing that like dopamine hit every month. And then the rest of my practices, I'm not laying any stake in them. You know, I'm saying like, yeah, I really wanna learn some more about the OM alphabet. I wanna follow the year with the Kantoji Oracle. I wanna learn more about RWS symbology and thought. Like, there's all these things that I want to learn, but as soon as I make it a set practice, I'm going to avoid it. So I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna check in with myself whenever I feel like it and say, okay, what the idea of doing that making me feel right now? And that's giving myself some autonomy in that. And so, I don't know, I just wanted to talk about this in case anyone else maybe experiences the same thing and just didn't have the words to put to it, or you already did, and it's still cool and so fun to talk about it. You know, you gotta love when you're a neurodivergent person and your special interest becomes neurodivergence. I mean, don't we all just love talking about it and just discovering these things about ourselves? So, yeah, I think that's all I have to say. I feel like this one was really especially all over the place. I apologize, because these are kind of some new thoughts. Usually I let it simmer a little bit longer before I start talking about it, but I didn't do that this time, because I got excited. So yeah, that's kind of my plan. I'm gonna see how that goes. And I think it's a thing too around just kindness and not shaming ourselves when things don't work and when things do kind of make our nervous system feel a little bit activated, to ask the question of, is this good for me, rather than being like, but I should do this. Okay, I'm gonna leave it there. Yeah, that's all I got. What a first video for 2024, but yeah, I hope you're all having a great beginning to the new year, and I'll see you again very soon.